gamers, this is Liz Davidson from Beyond Solitaire, and today I'm going to be reviewing Final Girl. This is a solo-only game from Ryder Games about being the final girl in a horror movie. Alright, so this is the core box for Final Girl. Final Girl is a board game from Ryder Games that is basically a re-implementation of the Hostage Negotiator engine, but with what I think are some improvements. In Final Girl, however, you are a final girl. You will choose a setting, you will choose an insane supernatural killer, and you will try to survive your own little horror movie in the form of a board game. I normally just kind of show things set up already, but this game is actually very special in how you set it up. So Final Girl has a core box, but this is not the only box you need to play. The core box is where, so far anyway for me, I'm just keeping the rulebook, the main board. These are some overflow boards for when there's a lot of victims. And then in here you have your basic dice, your basic tokens, and all of the Final Girl cards. And there's some generic cards that'll go in each version of this game that you play. However, where's the setting? Where's the killer? Well, those come in separate boxes that I'm going to show you, partially because they're super cool and partially because you need them to play the game. All right, so this is our generic Final Girl box. This is the Camp Happy Trails and Hans combo. So as you'll see, you have one Final Girl on this side with Hans kind of creeping in the back. And then you're also going to have a setting in this box. So this is the Camp Happy Trails box. So we have our other heroine, again, with Hans in the back. And so each of these boxes is going to contain a setting and a killer. But you can mix and match all of this stuff, and the way that you do that is that the boxes actually separate those components for you for the mix and match. So check this out. If I want to play with Hans the Butcher, I literally pull this box lid off, it's magnetized, and this is the Hans playmat, which is just absolutely crazy to me. This is so cool. So, you have any special rules for Hans, but he has no special rules. It's why he's a good starter. So if you're just going to start with something, this box is the one. And then any components that are specific to Hans will go in here. And as you can see, this is the Hans side of the box, but what is on the other side is the Camp Happy Trails setting. So we'll put the magnet back on. What? Then we're going to open this part up. And yeah, you can see this is Camp Happy Trails, and there's stuff for that set up in here. So again, Camp Happy Trails is like the generic setting. There's no special rules for this one, but the other boxes will have some. So I just think this is such a neat setup. Basically, the boards are incorporated into the game boxes. That's amazing to me. And again, magnets are neat. But there's several other killer and setting combos that you can enjoy. So I'll show you the ones that I have, which I think is all of them. So in addition to Camp Happy Trails, which is super cool, you could choose to play against Dr. Fright, who is kind of a Freddy Krueger inspired character. And then his base setting is Maple Lane. So you can go against Freddy Krueger on Maple Lane. And again, you have two more Final Girls that come in the box as well. And you can play any Final Girl with any killer with any set. You get the Sacred Groves against Inkanyamba. So you have a totally different setting and setup and everything with, again, two more Final Girls. We have Creech Manor, which is like a creepy poltergeist-inspired house. And then you have the poltergeist ghost that you can fight, so you can reenact Poltergeist. Or you can visit the Carnival of Blood, where you can go up against Geppetto, this creepy puppet master who also has little minions who mess with you in the game. So there's just so much variety between these boxes. Even if you have the core set in one box, there's a bunch of different setup stuff that I'll show you. But I wanted you to get a sense of just how varied and exciting this game is in terms of its options. You might also want to know, though, that you can't just put all the expansions into one box and then throw them all away, because you need the expansion boxes to have, the actual killers and settings. So these are necessary. You do have to keep them. So be ready with your storage. There's also a fun little mini thing called Terror from Above. So you could basically implement this with any of the physical settings, but instead of having a killer, you have the birds, which is terrifying. And then I will be using this to determine who I'm going to play against and in what setting when I make a video, when I make my playthrough video for this game, my How to Solo. This is a Necronomicon that has a couple of dice in it, and these are actually keyed to the setting and the bad guy that you can play against. So if you don't know what killer you want to play and you don't know what setting you want to play it in, guess what? the game provides. This may have just been a Kickstarter extra, but I'm quite tickled by it. And actually, you know, I don't really paint or anything, but maybe I need to maybe paint this or something to make it look cool. All right, so this is a basic setup for Final Girl. This is just the Camp Happy Trails, Hans the Butcher standard setup, and this is the one I'm going to talk you through for this review. In every game, you have to set up your Final Girl stuff, the killer stuff, and then the location stuff. And the ultimate goal of the game is always for the Final Girl to defeat the killer. There are victims on this little map, so you can see all the yellow potential victims of the killer. Our Final Girl in pink is going to try to rescue them, and our killer in red is going to try to kill them, but their ultimate goal is to kill each other. So they are on a collision course. There's nothing you can do about it. And to that end, your Final Girl is going to have to take actions to save victims because it does help her, but she's also going to have to power up so she can take the killer down. Here on our location board, we're always going to have a variable setup. There are several setup cards, so whichever one you draw is going to tell you where to put victims, where to put your Final Girl and your killer. And you're also going to randomly shuffle some items that you can find in various locations on the map. Some of them are weapons, some of them are medicine. This one is a lucky rabbit's foot. So you just never know what you're going to find, especially because you shuffle different item cards every time. And then you're going to have your killer, who also has a variable setup. So basically, one thing that's kind of neat about this game is that even if you only have one feature film box, you're going to play several different versions of the same killer and location, because the setup will be different, the items you have available will be different, and the killer's powers will be different. So over here on Hans, he's got a bloodlust meter. Basically, this is going to allow him to move further and hit harder as he continues to kill people, because that's very exciting for him. And as things progress, you'll uncover a dark power. So he has a few different dark powers that you shuffle randomly. Pick one for the board for a game. And then in the finale, he'll also have a final action card that's super brutal and scary. Both he and Reiko have health tokens that are generally just these little hearts, but we each have a final health token that represents a little bit of mystery. So in a horror film, you just never know if somebody's really dead or not. You gotta wait. So if we got Hans all the way down to this health token and he lost it, we would then see if we flip it over and find extra health as he was coming back from the depths of hell to come at us one more time. We also might get a second chance, we just don't know. But while this is Hans's headquarters, here's where Reiko's gonna do all of her stuff. So she's the Final Girl that I've chosen to display for this video, but there are a whole bunch of Final Girls and they're all cool. So choose a way, have a good time. So Reiko has her health over here. She's got her time tracker over here. Any items that she picks up are stored on the right. And her own card is here where she can get special rewards for helping victims out. And then ultimately when she fills that, she can get her special Final Girl power. All the things that she does are going to be based on cards that she's purchased from the card market. So basically every turn is going to start with the action phase, and the action phase is where you use your cards. Reiko starts with cards that cost her 0 time in her opening hand. To purchase other cards from the market that are fancier, you're going to have to spend time. The thing that makes this interesting is that that's also the time that you're spending on actions, depending on how your turn goes. So for example, if you see this red hourglass, it means that Reiko is spending time. And so her budget for buying cards will go down the more stuff she does, especially if it's done with varying degrees of success. The other thing that's going to play in here is her success on her rolls. So here we have different options depending on how well a roll goes. So if Reiko rolls 2 successes, then she gets the extra good result. 1 success, a good result. No success, oops, things went wrong. And the success of her actions depends on a roll of the dice. So if we just roll 2 dice, so this horror meter she's going to have to manage, because normally she can roll 2 dice. If she gets too freaked out, only 1. If she feels like she has things under control, she gets 3. So in addition to health, victims, and time, you're also going to want to manage this meter. But let's say Reiko rolls 2 dice. These are 2 failures. You have a blank face. Oops. But a success would be a 5 or a 6 on the die, which have stars on the face. Or you might roll a partial success that you can turn into a real success. If you roll a 3 or a 4, there will be an image of 2 cards on the back. And what that means is that in order to make this a success roll, you've got to discard 2 cards from your hand. So if you have the cards for it and you need the action, so be it. You got to throw some stuff away. If you don't, well, it's a failure and you're going to get something you maybe don't like on your card that you were trying to play. So this game is essentially making you balance between hand management, time management, and dice mitigation. You can definitely get unlucky, but there's also stuff that you can do about that. Such as, for example, this close call card here that you can buy to reroll horror dice. So never fear, there's always something you can do. And no matter what happens, you'll get a dramatic story. So over here's the card market. After you play the cards for a turn, they're going to go off to the side. Anything that's still in your hand can stay there, but then you can spend time to buy more cards from the market. One thing that's particularly notable is that cards that you've played on a turn are not available in the market immediately after you play them. I would have to buy cards from the market first, then put these back on the market for next turn. So cards are only available every other turn if you're using them regularly. So you need to budget what Reiko can afford in terms of her time, what cards you're holding in your hand, whether you want to spend big but not be able to buy as much on a following turn. There's a lot to think about in this game, even though you might see the dice and think, oh, well, this is just about luck. There's a lot more to it than that. After Reiko does all her stuff, then it's the killer's turn, and he is powered by the terror deck. Every time the killer has a turn, we're going to resolve the killer action, which in this case basically means the killer will move towards the closest stabbable target and try to stab it. And then we're going to draw a card from the terror deck that will make terrible things happen to us. Some of those things are minor dark powers that make the killer stronger. Others are things that inconvenience us, cause more victims to die, or are generally just a pain in the butt. On our turn, we'll be trying to move all these victims towards the exits and get them off of the map. Meanwhile, the killer will be trying to get close to them, kill them, or make some of them panic and run around. After that, you do any cleanup you need to do, and it's the final girl's turn again to do something about this nasty killer. So you, as the final girl, have a lot to manage in addition to your own fear when trying to take out the murderous maniac who is on the loose, whoever it might happen to be, and in whatever setting you happen to be doing it. And that is the very quick overview of Final Girl.
All right, so let's talk about Final Girl. I will just front load the fact that I really, really like it. I think I really love it, actually, but we'll do like the full talk through. So I'm going to start with my quibbles so that I can then just gush about it freely. So there are just a couple minor things about Final Girl that, might bother you. One is that because the boards are also the sides of the boxes, a lot of times there's bend in them, and like that's just like the tiniest little tactile thing that irritates me. That's really minor. The other thing that I would say is that there are often cases where it's hard to know exactly what to do in the rules. There are ways that you can resolve ambiguities in the rule book, but there are also occasional moments where I'll be told that, for example, my behavior is panicked as a result of a card or something like that. And I looked so hard through the rule book and did not find it in the course of play. So there are the occasional little things that make the game a little bit messy. And that can also be exacerbated a little bit when you have combined killers and settings that are from different boxes. So you'll see in my playthrough, I used the Poltergeist at Maple Lane, and I will say that my game in that recording ends a little bit too easily because of the structure of the board and the way that searching works. I got lucky, but the game also could have turned out really, really rough. And so just kind of depending on the die rolls, but also on factors you can't control, such as something hidden in a search pile, you can have some real swinginess in terms of how difficult the game feels and how well things work out. That said, you could see those things as a problem. Ultimately, though, I don't. And here's why. First of all, this game is one of the best blends of theme and mechanism that I have seen in a long time. You really feel like you are playing through a scary movie. Whether you choose to treat it as a funny one or a scary one is actually really up to you. But there's just so much goofy stuff that happens. All of the tarot cards have great little catchphrases and titles on them. The events are hilarious. You can have like a boyfriend who sacrifices himself for you, or a clingy victim who follows you around and hurts you if you try to leave them. There are just so many little emergent story elements that appear here that really just give an incredible feel to this game, especially if you like scary movies, especially the classic ones, and you're looking for a game to really capture that, because I would say that this one very much does. I've had so many incredible moments playing this game, just things that make me laugh, horrible defeats, squeaking out right under the line because things just happen to turn out that way. You never know how the game's going to turn out, but every single time it's going to be exciting and it's going to really fit the theme of the game. I also think that mechanically, despite some of the ambiguities I mentioned earlier, this game works really, really well. I love trying to balance all the things I need to balance. It never feels like you can get enough done on a turn. So especially if you don't roll as well as you wanted to, your movement can be limited. You might try to achieve something and really fail and end up hurting yourself in the process. And all of these things really kind of add to the drama of the proceedings in a way that makes you feel like there's always something that you can do. So you can always discard cards for time, or do something to mitigate a die roll, or, fight out the result of the game in one way or another. And because of that, you really feel the stress of, where's my horror meter? How big is my hand this turn? What strategically can I do? And there are definitely better and worse decisions that you can make, even though die rolls and card draws also have a large impact. So I generally really like the balance between luck and skill that this game requires of me. It gives me a way to fight back tooth and nail, even when the odds are against me and Hans the Butcher is ready to roll. And essentially everything just really works together really well. And even though I mentioned some quibbles about the mixing of killer and setting, I actually find that in most cases it works shockingly well and really does add to the fun of things. So you would think that Hans is a natural fit at Camp Happy Trails because that's the way you initially play him, but he's also really enjoyable in other settings, and that's also true of the other killers. And all the special rules and quirks for each killer, for each setting, give the game life and longer legs in ways that are going to keep me coming back to it again and again, trying different combinations. But I think, the thing that I like the most about Final Girl really comes down to a quality that's very difficult to define, which is this game just brings me joy. I really enjoy playing Final Girl. And, that's something that it's hard to, as a board game critic, quantify in some way. I mean, I can say, oh, the mechanisms work really well together. Oh, what a lovely marriage of theme and mechanism. And, I can talk about all that. But the game just has such a good spirit to it. It's so funny. It knows that it has such a playful nature. The way that the scenarios play out, the text on the cards, everything has just the right touch to keep me smiling and laughing and excited about what's going to happen next every single time that I've played it so far. And there are just so few games, even really wonderfully constructed ones, that can do that for me. So as a solo experience, Final Girl is really, really going to have staying power on my shelf. And I am just so glad that it exists, because it actually brings joy to my gaming life that I don't always achieve, especially as a jaded game reviewer. The last thing I might talk about is, how is this different from Hostage Negotiator? So if you've seen previous work of mine, I really love Hostage Negotiator. I think it's a great game. And I think that Final Girl may be a bit better. The only thing that Final Girl doesn't have that Hostage Negotiator really does is a campaign, although who knows, that may be coming. Maybe we'll have like a Final Girl who finds herself in a series of horror movies. But I think that some of the changes to the Hostage Negotiator engine that appear in Final Girl are really, really good changes. I love the addition of a map where, you have a motion component as well as just a conversation component. I like the way that the cards and the success and failures are re-implemented with that in mind. I like the events in conjunction with the tarot cards. I like the mix and match elements because, in Hostage Negotiator, it took a longer time for more negotiators to show up. This game basically comes with everything that you need to enjoy the best of what Hostage Negotiator was, and a little bit more. I also think that thematically, even though I didn't mind the Hostage Negotiator theme at all, I think that a scary movie is going to be just much more appealing to a wider array of people, and it's a lot easier to make it funny and to make jokes. Hostage Negotiator always had a little bit more seriousness to it because sometimes you really felt like you were trying to save lives, and that's true in Final Girl too, but because our culture enjoys scary movies as something that's funny and that results in them as something that, is something to regard with sort of a sickened delight, it makes Final Girl more fun just from the theme as well as from nice additions to its mechanics. So those are my overall thoughts on Final Girl. I love it. I think that if you're a solo player and this looks even remotely appealing to you, that you should try it. And it'll definitely be one that has a long-standing place on my shelf for years to come. Thanks so much for watching. Please like, subscribe, comment, and happy gaming.